Is it gone now? Okay.
Live streaming is on.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon panel. My name is Alexandra Bulat. I work a lot with EU citizens, especially giving advice on immigration-related issues. We have the other two people on the panel, two very young people on the panel who will look at different aspects of the law and legal protection in the UK for EU and international students. So we have Natasha, who will be speaking especially from a Romanian perspective and about Romanian students and also her experience studying law in the UK and how other people could come and study law in the UK, especially in the current COVID and Brexit context. And then we have Oni as well, who's specialized more in criminal law and who'll be speaking about the different challenges in that area as well. So I thought we have like a broad question for this panel. It's more of a conversation, sharing our different experiences. Each of us have experience in a particular area of law. Natasha and Oni studied at law universities in the UK. My experience in immigration advice is actually through a vocational route because don't have a legal background in terms of a formal education, but I'm a qualified immigration advisor with the OIC giving advice on the EU settlement scheme. So we'll get back to this issue of what EU students need to know when they're coming in the UK now in 2020 and later on in 2021. Our overarching question for this panel is what are the lessons to be learned about making sure that young people are legally protected in the UK. So we can speak about issues like a range of issues here, like housing, like accessing courses, like getting the right immigration status in the UK. But first of all, I thought because Natasha and Oni are law students, I thought what would be very valuable for people here today, for young people listening in, is to get a bit more of a flavor of what it means to study law in the UK and what are the different challenges and different routes to that, and perhaps a bit of advice from both the panelists here about that. So maybe if we can give some advice to perhaps current students or prospective students who are interested in those areas. And I will start with Oni. So over to you.
Hi guys. So yeah, I am currently studying at the University of Law. I'm studying my LPC. I'm going to go into my second year in September. I studied my undergrad. I originally went to Coventry University, but then I actually dropped out and then went back to Birkbeck to study law in the evening in 2016. I think one of the biggest challenges, I guess, would be studying and working at the same time. Only because it's quite expensive. I found it to be quite expensive, so I had to kind of be able to study and work just to support my studies. Law I find it very interesting. It's very kind of analytical subjects. I find it very, very enjoyable because I personally enjoy reading. I think that's kind of what drew me to law the most. There is a lot of reading. There's a lot of kind of structuring arguments. Sorry, you have to be able to defend your arguments as well. You have to be able to kind of anticipate what your kind of opposing counsel may argue to make their case stronger. So I think for me, law, you have to be almost one step ahead. You have to enjoy reading. Yeah, I think that's what I would say.
That's great. Thanks very much, Oni. Natasha, is your experience similar? Do you have other further advice for prospective law students?
I think I totally agree with what she said, but the most important advice is like to have a specific career path in mind, but at the same time be versatile. For example, when I applied to study law, I had just like a general passion. I like law, okay, like how she said, like I like reading, I like arguing, I like debating, doing things like that. But there is a huge lack of information also from universities regarding what specific careers you can follow, and I did not do like my research properly on what steps I need to do. So I think the most important advice is like for prospective students is like reflect on your skills, think about what you would like to do, what gives you like pleasure from a job, and plan ahead accordingly. I mean, we can talk about in depth for regarding the LPC or other professional qualifications, but I think that's just the most important piece of advice I would give.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that's a very important point about, how do you decide on this career path and how do you gain the work experience necessary. So I'm not sure if any of you want to comment on this idea of, how much does it matter to have work experience during your studies compared to.
I'll comment on that.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, so like I said, I've been studying and working together at the same time, and I have found working has been so invaluable in terms of kind of furthering my legal career. I've been lucky enough to be working as a paralegal since I started my studies in 2016. So I mean, I'm lucky enough to have about 4 years criminal and extradition paralegal experience. So as much as I found that having good grades is really important, I do really think that work experience kind of sets you apart from other law students. So where possible, definitely do endeavour to get as much work experience as possible. That could be in terms of volunteering as well. I think sometimes volunteering is really overlooked. But to law firms, it kind of looks like you're willing to go the extra mile for yourself and not get paid at the same time. So I think that work experience is definitely invaluable.
Natasha, what's your view on that?
It is fantastic the fact that you can find work experience in the law industry, but like speaking to tons of lawyers, it doesn't really matter what type of work experience you have as long as you have something and you know how to leverage it. For example, I worked part-time in a restaurant. And basically, if you know how to prove in an application the fact that, okay, you work in a restaurant, but you identify certain business aspects or legal aspects of that restaurant, and at the end of the day, you learn something from your work experience and you know how to basically put it forward and like advertise yourself. I think you can have any type of work experience as long as you have something on your CV at the end of the day.
Yeah, and sorry, can I just say something else? Like for example, I was working in Debenhams as well. That was my first ever job, and yeah, like you said, as long as you can put it forward in a way that kind of shows your people skills or your communication skills, then yeah, like you said, any sort of work experience is brilliant, really.
Yeah, I think I really do relate to that because I think it's all about those transferable skills. Exactly as you said, the way you market your skills after that in the job market of your chosen career. I mean, I started studying in the UK in 2012. So I just finished my PhD. So I've literally been like 8 years in university, but those 8 years I've consistently worked during my studies and actually found that the skills I learned through work and through different types of work, from working in the students' union, like one of my very first jobs, to working in different research projects as an assistant, to transcribing things, to translator, to like a range of freelance roles, and like finally getting to project management after like many years of different work experience. I think this combination of work experience and studies actually it's very valuable, and I learned a lot through being exposed to different industries as well. I mean, now we're in this context of coronavirus, of especially in the UK context of Brexit, a lot of political and social uncertainty. What do you think are the main challenges for students, especially students who are who want to come now in 2020 or later on? International and also EU students, but also international students who want to pursue a law university, but any kind of university in general in the UK. And what would you advise them to take care about?
I think there are huge limits to obtaining work experience and networking, and having access to a lot of like advice from staff members. It is harder. I learned this through my university, seeing how they react to certain things during this period. But at the same time, there are opportunities. For example, if we talked about work experience, there are tons of virtual internships that are free from law firms using Inside Sherpa, and basically everyone can have access to it. So my advice is research. Do your research on what type of work experience you have access to, what type of virtual networking events are out there, and engage in them and work on your online communication skills. So yeah.
Yeah, I would say exactly the same. The virtual networking and virtual kind of law firm events have actually been quite amazing. I think they're advertised on, I think it's lawcareers.net and
Yeah.
other sorts of different law, like law platforms. So just kind of attend as many as possible to kind of make your CV stand out once again.
I mean, related that, I would say like one of my advice to people would be like get a LinkedIn profile. You find so many different like online
Yeah.
seminars and events there. What do you think in general about like the use of social media, especially in this COVID time, to kind of get career opportunities or different work experiences? What worked for you? What kind of social media, and what would you recommend to others?
I think, like you said, LinkedIn has really exploded in terms of all the different people kind of advertising the different things that they're doing. Some barristers and solicitors, they've been giving out like CV workshops. They've been doing training contracts help. They've been doing pupillage help, interview techniques, things like that. So I think LinkedIn has definitely been one of the best kind of social medias, like you said, to for career advice and things like that.
Yeah, I think we are addressing to people who grew up with technology and know how to use Instagram and all of the other social media platforms. And I would say, like, use the same energy and put the same effort into LinkedIn. And you should network at like at least 3 levels on LinkedIn with your existing peers, with people that you already know, that go to university with you. Find people that might have similar aspirations to you. For example, if you want to do something with law, find aspiring solicitors. If you want to be a software engineer, find a group for that. And you have a lot of information, like you said, like students often exchange information regarding assessment centers, video interviews, type of questions that you find. And lastly, you should also try and network, be keen and bold enough to network with people who are already active in industries and companies that you might want to take a look at. So yeah, LinkedIn is essential.
Yeah, there are a lot of like LinkedIn learning, like free courses that are actually really useful and free, a lot of them. So very good for students to kind of have something else alongside your studies if you don't have enough exams or assessments already. I mean, I was just kind of more on this topic about the challenges. A lot of the the media and like a lot of the political discourse at the moment is quite divided, and we have different articles speaking about the future of universities, especially after 2021 in the UK. So a lot of concerns that perhaps we'll have fewer international students, or definitely fewer EU students coming, and kind of the challenges that international students specifically face. So I'm not sure if you would like to comment on that, because from your personal perspective or from the perspective of your colleagues, what do you think would be the main challenges for people who will be coming to the UK after now from 2021 onwards? If you have any thoughts at all on that.
Well, obviously there are challenges on many levels, like financial challenges. The UK is going into a recession, as we see, so it might be harder for people from Eastern Europe. In my case, I know tons of students who can barely afford accommodation, and they afford accommodation because they don't benefit from loans from the government by working tons of part-time jobs in bars and stuff like that. And since this is not available anymore, the university does not give scholarships or things like that to people who are not British students. So I think a financial challenge we will likely to see. And some universities force students to come back on campus, my university, Warwick, being an example. So we need to there needs to be an adjustment to the online environment and making opportunities for people from other types of groups.
Oni, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the financial burden will probably be, the kind of most significant, especially because, as far as I'm aware, I don't think that, because for example, the University of Law, they haven't, we're still paying full price university fees, even though all of our studying is now online. And for an international student who they pay substantially a lot more money than we do, I think the financial impact of that is going to be really, really felt, especially because there's not going to be that many jobs going around anymore because of the recession and because of businesses closing down. So I do think that the financial burden is going to be one that's going to be really, really felt.
Yeah, I think, I mean, on this topic, like, I'll just come in with my immigration law hat on. I think, for EU students, one of the things that's not really well known for EU students who have an offer now for 2020 to start in 2020. So in the UK, all the EU citizens who've been in the UK, unless they have become British over time, we need to apply for the EU settlement scheme. So it's a new system to have our status in UK law, because at the moment our status, once the UK was in the EU, it was under EEA regulations. So because the UK is leaving the EU, has left the EU, and now is in the transition period, we need to secure our status in UK law. So that's why we have this new system called the EU settlement scheme. It's an online application system, free of charge. And if you've been in the UK for more than 5 years, you can apply for settled status, which is an indefinite leave to remain. And if you've been in the UK for fewer than 5 years, you can apply for pre-settled status, which is limited leave to remain, which allows you to be in the UK for another 5 years, and you can apply for the full settled status before that status expires. But what a lot of students that I speak to, like, I'm running a Young Europeans network at an organization called 3 Million, and what a lot of young people ask me about, and they don't necessarily know, is, do I have to actually come now to the UK? Will I still be able to apply for this new status if I decide not to go to London, to have to rent in London now, and come when the course is resumed to normal, let's say in January? And actually, although the deadline to apply for this is in June 2021, you need to prove that you've been a resident, or physically present in the UK before 31st of December 2020. So I'm quite concerned about students who perhaps, they cannot physically, come to the UK. They got an offer for 2020. And if they come after this deadline, they won't be able to prove they were resident before this cut-off date, in which case their immigration situation will become more complex. I know some universities are actually advising individual students, depending on their immigration situation, to come to the UK at least for one day before that cut-off date, to be able to kind of apply for this. After 2021, on the first of, for young people listening here and perhaps who don't follow UK politics as I do, from the 1st of January 2021, we are ending freedom of movement. So this means that future students from the EU will come through a new visa system, and we won't have any more the same fees as British people do. We'll pay international fees, and we also won't have access to student loans anymore. And as Natasha said, that is quite concerning, because especially a lot of students that I know, pretty much anyone I know from Romania, from my cohort who came in 2012, and everyone that I know pretty much, we couldn't have, afforded to come and build careers in the UK without having access to home fees or student loans. So what do you think the future of the universities would be in terms of, just the diversity of the student cohort if those measures are introduced? Or do you actually see some opportunities going forward for the UK and the UK university sector in this post-Brexit world? What do you think?
I would like to think that universities would kind of adjust to the new normal, in a sense. I think if a lot of students are unable to travel, I do think that they should be, kind of able to access they should get their books and things sent to them, or they should maybe pay reduced fees, or just something that accommodates the new version of normal that we're going to be experiencing. I would hope that a lot of the fees are reduced given the new set of circumstances for international students as well. Yeah, that's kind of my thoughts.
I personally think that if we look at least for let's see if we analyze the situation of universities by 2025, if EU students are going to be obliged to pay the fees, obviously, and other European students, they are going to have a huge drop in diversity, like you mentioned, of students. And that is extremely important, not only for the academic environment, but universities are also businesses. They are research universities, and they generate a lot of profit from the work of students who study there, and then they go on and take research roles there. So I think there will be a huge loss for the entire British higher education system because of this thing, and frankly because of Brexit. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it will be everything's so uncertain. So, but I think some universities already felt a drop in the number of applications, especially for EU students. And I think, for me, always when I think about diversity within campus. Yes, UK campuses are much more diverse than perhaps other countries, but also what's also important, I mean, for me personally, is to have a diversity of different backgrounds as well, because we always have people who could, you know, in every single country. You have in Romania, you know, people who can afford 30,000 a year for tuition fees. You have in every single country, but we have diversity in terms of people coming from different socioeconomic backgrounds, people who are talented, have the good grades, but perhaps they just don't have the financial opportunities to come and apply to study in the UK as they have done before. And I think that could be, you know, could be an opportunity there in terms of remarketing some of university services in the future. But at the same time, I think the numbers of EU students would drop purely because majority of EU students who have come to the UK, especially in recent years, have been accessing student loans and have been here through the home fees. And it's also very different, even if student loans still existed, which they won't be accessible to EU students anymore after the end of freedom of movement. But even if they did, like, you know, it's different having 27,000 pounds in debt to having like 100,000 pounds in debt that you have to pay off. I think that's something that you know, I'm thinking like, would, you know, I left the Romania when I was 18. Like, would I have chosen when I was 18 to come to the UK if I had, you know, if I could accumulate 100,000 pounds debt, or would I rather have went to, I don't know, the States or France or another country? Like, I really don't know. I don't know for sure. I would have still chosen to, you know, come to the UK. If the fees weren't home fees.
I think, like you say, but the convenience of loans and the fact that they are accessible to a lot of Eastern European students, that is what attracts them to the UK. And I think in the future, probably these students are going to choose countries such as Denmark, who have a free education system, or the Netherlands, other European countries. So it is a loss.
Yeah, I think so. I think socially as well, it'll be quite a loss, because universities are kind of, like you said, they kind of hold people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, you know, which kind of makes the university life really, it's just kind of mixed, and more you get to mix with people that you wouldn't usually mix with, because they come from different places and different countries and different experiences. But you know, if there is a drop in international students, and I think socially we'll feel it as well.
Yes, will be an uncertain future for universities in the next years. And I think this also affects, you know, not only, of course, if you have lower student numbers, you have like lower revenue in the fees, but you also have, then there will be like possible cuts in jobs in academia as well, and like this will in turn affect the economy of the UK. So it's quite a worrying situation. And I think in a way, I mean, for me, when I don't know about your, you know, why you chose particular universities or particular courses, but for me, when I came to the UK, I was, as many young people, I wasn't necessarily extremely sure about the subject I wanted to do. But I really chose the UK because I had this idea in mind of the, you know, brand. I would call it like the brand UK was, you know, a very positive brand of universities. And so like whatever you do, you know, it's a very flexible system. And then you can find your path and your career path after you get into the system. And I think a lot of young people, because of freedom of movement and because of, you know, the same access to the same student fees, the tuition fees as British students, and the student loans, you know, many people, young people just took this opportunity and so like, okay, I'll go there, like I got an offer, I'll see how it goes. Some of my friends changed course over a year, like some just said, actually that's not for me, I'll do a totally different degree. Some just realized that they really want to, I don't know, be an entrepreneur or like go to open a business in the UK. And that's all I kind of having, is losing that flexible opportunity, because of course when you're linked to a student visa, you have restrictions on work, you have restrictions on other economic activities. And what do you actually think about this? You know, what, this is one of the main issues, like in, you know, what one of the main changes after the end of freedom of movement, that obviously EU students will have to pay the same fees, higher fees, they won't have access to student loans, but also they will be subject to tighter work restrictions during their studies when they will come through the new visa system. So what do you think about the situation of international students right now, about, you know, the fact that they're restricted in terms of work during their studies, and like, you know, what do you think in general about the situation of international students in the UK, if you have any kind of comments on that?
I think, unfortunately, many of them will be forced to return to their own countries. I know by comparison, some people on my course who want to secure training contracts in the UK, they come from Singapore, Hong Kong, or like Nigeria, other international countries. Basically, they need a visa, like you said. And when you apply for any type of internship in the law industry, or probably other industries, they ask you, do you require sponsorship for your visa? Do you require do you have the right to work in the UK? And even though they declare that it is not necessarily a factor that should disadvantage you as an applicant, it is actually, because they don't want to incur the cost of you obtaining a visa, and they want to have like a secure candidate, someone who is going to be able to work in the future. So it is going to basically create the same disadvantage by comparison to the other future students in the UK, but that shouldn't be a deterrent factor at the end of the day.
I think.
Go on.
Sorry. Yeah, I kind of think the same. I think it's going to put future students at really a real disadvantage if they're kind of unable to work. They're going to be, they're not really going to be able to support themselves, unfortunately, which could lead them in more financial difficulties, which I think may like she said, may kind of leave them feeling like they have no option but to return to their countries. I think as a whole, I think society will really kind of lose out from not having such diverse people at the universities.
Yeah, I think that it's actually very important. I mean, maybe I'm not sure, like, who we can't actually see from our end of the live stream who exactly is listening. But if there are any EU students, if you're from an EU country, EEA country as well, European Economic Area, and you are, or Switzerland, and you are currently in the UK and you haven't yet secured your immigration status resettlement scheme, please do so. I met so many people, like I do a lot of outreach, especially before COVID. I went to different communities. And I actually got questions from students saying, well, but I don't have to apply for this. Thank you for informing me. But, I'm a student, so my student status is fine. Your student status is not your immigration status. So if you are in the UK, if you qualify to apply under the settlement scheme, you need to secure that status before the end of the deadline of the scheme, which is 30th of June 2021. It's just because I do hear, I think there's sometimes, depending on what Facebook group you're on or what social media, there's quite a bit of misinformation. So I heard from some students saying, well, I'm a student, I don't have to apply to the settlement scheme. Or I heard, well, my parents who are in the UK applied, so I'll be fine. No, it's individually. So even if your parents applied, you also have to have your own kind of status, unless your parents applied for you if you're under 21, which they could, but otherwise you have to have your individual things. So it's very important for anyone listening to know that.
I applied personally. I didn't find the process that hard. But my question for you is, in case something goes wrong, one of my friends, for example, he applied for the scheme and they mistook his name. There was someone who had an identical name with him in London, and they said that they refused his application because he had some like NFAs, some charges, which was not true, and he solved the problem. Is there a right to appeal for students who are refused this, like the status? What can they do in this situation?
Yeah, there shouldn't be like, yes, there is, and this shouldn't have happened, especially for a mistake. Like first of all, there's a phone line for the Home Office. If you just go on Google and say like Home Office Resolution Center, like I would have like just called and explained it's a misunderstanding and explain the situation. If it's already a done and dusted decision and you want some legal advice, what I would recommend is that, so there's different charities and organizations in the UK that offer legal advice for free. So I know. Yeah, I know at least a couple. For example, there's one called the Here for Good Law that you can find their contact on the website, specifically for EU citizens, kind of keeping their rights and accessing their rights after Brexit. There's an organization called the Settled, so settled.org.uk, that has advice in different languages, including Romanian actually, but also other European languages. And those are all organizations with immigration advisors, accredited immigration advisors. Another thing to actually touch on this topic, which I'm quite passionate about. There's a lot of advice going on online that's not from people who are accredited to give this advice. So in the UK, it's actually different from a lot of other countries where immigration advice is less regulated. In the UK, you have to be an accredited advisor if you're not a solicitor or an immigration solicitor. If you're an advisor like myself, I mean, I haven't been to law university, I haven't specialized in this. I went through like a training route. So if you are giving immigration advice, you need to be accredited. So for advisors, there is an organization called the OAIC. So if your advisor is not registered with that, they are probably giving unlawful immigration advice. And actually, there is quite a huge issue with this in some communities I work with. I often did some applications for the settlement scheme for, some, in my case, Romanian, because I speak Romanian, people who didn't have the access to the right technology because you need a smartphone to apply, to the app, or didn't have the right level of English to understand the application. And they were saying like, oh no, but this accountant advised me this way. And I think there's a lot of misinformation. So it's important to, if you actually need advice and you have a specific case like this person Natasha mentioned, but if you're in this situation, is to contact either your Citizens Advice Bureau locally, that some Citizens Advice Bureaus actually do provide advice on the EU settlement scheme, or if not, one of the national level charities like Here for Good, like Settled, and there are a range of others. Finally, if you're in London, there is a portal, a website called the EU Londoners Hub, where you can actually find a list of all the resources and different charities. So you can literally type in your postcodes and see where there is free legal advice on those immigration issues around you, and be able to help you on that. I mean, anything else on this kind of topic of student rights before we move on to, I mean, we have about, I think, 20 minutes left of this, so I have to think up new questions. Or does anyone, do any of you want to ask any kind of other questions or bring in different topics? I would have asked you, what's the most interesting thing you found for your degree? Like, it's always like a question that people ask. What's the most interesting thing or shocking thing in your area of law?
You guys mind me asking a question? Is that okay? Could I answer a question, please?
Yeah.
And you've talked a lot about working and training and student status and visa status, but in your opinion, that training to become qualified, do you consider that education or employment? Is it a job? Is it work? Do you see it as some kind of blended hybrid work and education? What do you think about training? What's your view on training? Is that all right for me to ask?
Yeah, I think maybe because I haven't done training part of my degree. I've just done like random jobs alongside my degree, but that's perhaps because I didn't study within a degree that has a clear professional path to it. But maybe, yeah, Natasha or Anya, because you're studying law, what's your opinion on that?
I think, like I said, I do think training the kind of hybrid working and studying, I think is really quite important. And I think, like Natasha said, because of kind of COVID and everything, there's been loads and loads of different opportunities online for those that can't obviously kind of do it in person. So I do think that this kind of lockdown has kind of brought about new opportunities and new kind of training methods, and new ways to get work experience or any sort of certificate to show that you've done. There was a commercial law firm that was giving out commercial, it was like I think it was X amount of weeks, and then after it, you got a certificate to say that you completed it and this is what you learned and so on and so forth. So I do think that training and education in this sort of new hybrid is quite important, and I think it's something that should definitely be taken advantage of whilst it's still here.
I agree, but I think that in the law industry, the LPC, the Bar Professional Qualification Exam, the GDL, and now recently, and I think people who probably study law and they are watching us, the SQE is a new exam which is going to replace what the LPC. The exam is basically the solicitor's qualifying examination, and I would suggest look into that. But my point is that they are treated as work mostly, not necessarily an academic environment, because law firms, they choose to sponsor you for that. They are a few, they cost a lot, and people who do it, they have a specific career path in mind. So I think they should be treated as a work type of experience.
Yeah, I think they're treated as you said because of the sponsorship and treated as work. And I think that the immigration issue arises because if you are, us from the EU or like British people or people from the EU so far, we didn't have any of those restrictions. But if someone who is from an international, from a non-EU background now and EU students after Brexit, if you have those work restrictions that are attached to your visa that you can come for the purpose of study and not to the purpose of working, and if we treat those different things as pure work in terms of the law, then we'll end up in a situation where some students may not be able to pursue those things because they would not be able to because of the Home Office regulations. So I think I do agree that what you're doing alongside, like you explained, is actual work because there's usually a company sponsoring you. I think what it needs, from my perspective, what we need is more flexibility from in immigration law in the UK and from the Home Office to actually, instead of discouraging international students to work and take up those opportunities during their studies, to actually encourage them and not penalize international students if they want to have work experience and not attach very strict conditions to their visas in terms of work, because it's not only benefiting them and obviously making most of their degree, what they pay a lot of money for, but it's also about kind of a lot of people, if they want to stay in the UK after or apply for a work visa after, it actually benefits the UK as well in terms of making sure that people have the right experience during their studies. But yeah, it's an interesting question. It's like kind of the intersection between education provision and what the immigration law actually allows different nationalities of people to do during their studies. I haven't ever done like an hour-long panel on this topic, so I have one, like maybe we can end on this to end with a message of hope and like a positive note, but also something like more in terms of your own topics, because we spoke a lot broadly about the immigration law, about different legislations, and about your advice to students in general. But I'll actually be quite interested because I'm not familiar with any of your main topics and areas of interest. What's the most interesting thing like in your actual area of specialty of law? Like for me, for example, like when I studied the legislation on citizenship and citizenship applications, one thing that actually shocked me is that your application will actually be rejected if you apply, say, on the 20th of July, and exactly 5 years on the 20th of July you weren't in the UK because you were on the holiday. It's kind of like an old rule that wasn't ever amended or removed. That means that your application will be rejected if you don't
Wow.
the UK exactly 5 years the moment you apply. So when I applied for British citizenship like a few months ago, I was like, I have to make sure to check that 5 years before I was in the country and I wasn't on holiday before. Kind of small things like this, that things like it makes you think like, why is this not revised, in this day and age when people travel a lot. So what's the most interesting thing for you that you ever learned, in your areas?
I think one of the most interesting things I've learned in criminal law was when I first started was it's a doctrine called joint enterprise, and it's basically if you and your friend go out and your friend does something, you could still potentially go to prison for it. And yeah, I found that quite interesting, and a lot of young people didn't know about that. So I started a company. One of the things that we do is we go into schools and we teach young people their rights, like how to kind of not get in trouble and how to not get caught up in a joint enterprise situation. So yeah, I think for me, joint enterprise was definitely one of the things that I found out that I didn't know about, which I found quite interesting.
Yes, sounds interesting. Like I knew about the concept, but I bet a lot of people don't know.
Yeah, a lot of
how this works.
Yeah.
Very important to take a note
to
of
add
that.
on in criminal.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Sorry,
To
no.
add on criminal law stuff that was really shocking to me in my first year. Basically, you cannot commit rape in the UK as a woman.
I didn't know
According to the act, there are huge gaps in the British legislation on sexual offenses and sexual assault and things like that. But I think what is most interesting for me, going back to what Alexandra says, not necessarily about studies, you reminded me about the deadline. And I think students should also know this is like to be in touch with the student loans company. And when you apply for funding, be really careful about like notifications from them, letters, what you have to send to them, because basically they don't notify you at all. So at the beginning of the last academic year, they had a huge mistake with my application. They claimed that they didn't receive anything from me, even though I sent them like 4 letters from Romania. And the university was about to expel me. I mean, not continue my studies because of this. So you need to be aware of like what steps and what procedures you need to follow in order to solve issues with the student loans company, who is like really notorious for having problems with students and their funding and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think that's actually very good, general advice for like, I would say everyone who contacts me, I'm planning to come to
Alexandra, I don't know where
I'm not hearing you anymore. I think there's a technical issue.
Yeah, anyways, what other type of advice would you have regarding like student life for people who are coming to study into a different country, like general tips? How did you accommodate to the Alexandra personally to the culture in the UK, the student life?
I mean, can you still hear me? Because my internet goes on and off for some reason. Great. Yeah, I mean, I was saying that I think, well, you know what you said, I really agree that what I didn't do when I came to the UK, totally uninformed, was actually inform myself about how everything works. Actually, go to the university before, visit it, and like kind of get informed on how, renting works in the UK, how much I can work, what my rights to work at, like what's the minimum wage, like kind of basic things like this that you have to be aware before coming to a country. I mean, my story is like, perhaps not very typical in that a lot of students I know, they were, quite sure, like, I want to do law, I want to do medical school, I want to do this. I was like, I want to leave Romania. I'm just going to apply to 5 random universities and see if I can get in one. And if not, I'm going to work and it's okay. So I ended up in the University of Sussex because that's the only university that gave me an offer. And I was quite grateful for that because after that, I had so many people who inspired me at the University of Sussex that I then went to do a master's at Cambridge University and then a PhD at UCL. So actually my random kind of gamble at the beginning ended up in actually finding a topic, which is immigration and in terms of the socio-political issues of immigration and then immigration law that actually fascinated me. And then I went on and I did further studies. But yeah, what I would say is, do inform yourselves before. And I think nowadays it's so easy. Everything is online. And I would say find some people who go to the same university or someone who is in the second year there and kind of just have a chat to them. Because when I came, what I found was that, well, I came, on my own, like I was, in a shared accommodation, randomly assigned. I didn't speak English particularly well. I mean, I did pass the IELTS test to get into university, but it's different from having a conversation in English with people who are born in the UK. And I remember always that I was in the kitchen in the shared accommodation. I was like, what? I don't get like anything. So yeah, I would say do inform yourself now with the Brexit context. Do inform yourself, actually make an informed decision about your immigration status, because if you're able to come before 31st December 2020, you can apply for pre-settled status under the EU settlement scheme. Whereas if you if you come to the UK after, there may be some complications in your status because you won't be able to prove you were resident before. So yeah, any final thoughts from either of you? I think we're almost done with this session before we conclude.
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to add on to what you said in terms of kind of general advice. One thing I would say is just kind of a general kind of be careful, be very wary of who you kind of talk to and who you kind of call your friend when you go to university. Because what I found is that a lot of people go to universities and prey on people that aren't from the UK, London especially, and they kind of prey on them and they take advantage of them, and a lot of people have gotten into trouble with the law by doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and only because they didn't know any better, they don't know the language, they don't know the culture. So yeah, just a kind of general kind of beware. Sorry to end on such a negative note.
No, do apply, do come. Like, I had students from Romania who asked me, like, I have an offer for 2020, should I still come? The UK is leaving the EU, whatever. Like, I would say take that opportunity. I mean, I had a brilliant experience overall. Like, I wouldn't say no to the opportunity just because it's a bit uncertain now. I would say take the opportunity, definitely, and then see where it leads afterwards. Final word, Natasha?
Yeah, I would say be positive, and if you come to university in the UK, get as engaged as possible. Find something. So there are tons of societies. Find something that you like. Take a new sport, learn a new language, make friends from different cultures. And like during this period with COVID, like reflect on how you can maintain productive, what you have done in this period, and try and gain new skills. For example, I started coding. Why not? Like try and do something new with your time, because this is going to be a huge question in interviews, and it is going to impact your future. Like, what have you done in this period? So yeah, reflect on what's happening right now.
Okay, great. Thanks, both of you. It was like a wonderful 1 hour discussion going through so many different topics. So I hope those people listening, the young people listening to us, got a positive message of taking advantage of opportunities to study in the first place and then work in the UK alongside their studies. I would say there are some challenges. There are some challenges, of course, with immigration legislation of what counts as work or studies. And I think overall we could. Any country, I'm not just blaming the UK government now, but any country take a more like open and flexible approach to studying, to actually be welcoming and open to students from across the world, and actually give them the opportunity to build professional experience as well during their studies, not only get their degree. There's sort of more discussions to be had on the different issues like student fees. Like our personally like why increase student fees for EU students instead of reducing the fees for non-EU students to the level that we all paid. But probably that's a bit too optimistic for me to hope for that change. So I hope you enjoyed the panel. I hope you took something useful, especially some of the practical advice from Oni and Natasha today. And we'll see some of you in the later sessions. So the summit is still going on until I think 6 p.m. today, so plenty more conversations to be had. So thanks again to everyone, and see you later.